Hi everybody, welcome to Module 7. We're going to talk about creating Excel applications, and we're going to get started on page 387. And you can see that in this module, we're going to break it down into the three different sessions. In the first, we're going to talk about an application. What is it? A lot of people think it sounds like a computer application. It's a program. We can create programs like, sheets that do things, but in this case, what we mean by application is a sheet with a specific purpose. If you remember back when we talked about VLOOKUP, we said, what if I had a row of information on a participant and I wanted to take that and put it, let's say, on an invoice? So that's what we're going to learn how to do. A sheet that has a very specific purpose. It will take data and automatically stick it in the right spots to, for example, allow us to print out an invoice. We're going to talk about data entry and data validation, making sure that the right information is on the sheet. And then finally, we're going to talk about macros, which is like creating a little program inside of your Excel spreadsheet to automate certain tasks and to have it do many cool things, right? Which can really speed up how we use Excel, and combining that with techniques that we've already learned could really build some amazing results. Okay, so you can take a look at the overview on page 388 and 389. But I thought that we would start with WordArt. I'm not really sure why they bring that up on page 390, but I guess it's a cool thing. So I'll start by pressing Insert. Actually, where did it go? Okay, it was hiding, but I found it. We go under Insert, Text, and WordArt. You might already see this shown if your screen is a little bigger than mine. And I press where it says WordArt, and it asks me to pick a style. You might have seen I've used this in previous videos. So basically, it comes out with your text here. And in the case of the textbook, it says we can create something that says paid, and we could drop that automatically onto one of the invoices that we're going to make if it becomes paid, right? So it's like this visual way which separates it from the normal data that we have in Excel. We can make it larger and smaller. We could change the colors. We could change the font and filling and dropout line and literally a million other things. So we have a lot of control over how we can make this text look. And I've often used this when I'm introducing a new module, and it works just like a giant text box. Now, you'll notice the interesting thing is that it doesn't actually sit inside a cell. It sits on top of it. So I could still select the cells underneath and move this over, unlike, for example, if I was merging the cells or so on. But it could block the text so I'm not able to see it behind it. All right, so that's the note on WordArt. It's nice to use, I guess. Okay, so we're going to talk about, in our example, we have some information on the top of the screen, and then down below we could fill out a form. Now, you'll note that the tip, this is very important on 391, says larger and more complex applications often require the input and output areas to be on separate sheets. And that makes sense because, like we always talk about, if we have a huge amount of data on one sheet, we don't want it to interfere, like to overwrite the information that we're trying to fill in. So let's set something simple up, and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's throw in some sample data, and we'll take a look. So you see here, we're basically running off of page 391. Here we have our pizza order. We have some information like name, address, phone number, and date, like today's date. And here we have size, like what size pizza, and each size has a different price. How many toppings? Of course, you just pick the number of toppings, and we throw them on for you. We don't let you pick. And we only have one drink available. It's Coke. It costs $1.99, right? So using all this information, we want to be able to put the information in here and then have it loaded into an order receipt that we bring to the person's door, containing all the information and showing them what they ordered, how much it is, their address, and so on. Like basically the delivery slip that you get from the pizza place. Okay, so now before we get to that, we're going to just take a little diversion and talk about naming cells. Okay, so naming cells is very important because when we want to deduct our total, right? So, if you run through this, we're going to come up with a sample order. We're going to have a bunch of different prices, and then we're going to use auto sum, or we'll use sum to add those all together. And we're basically going to say, okay, so this is my subtotal. and I'm going to add in tax by taking this number, multiplying it by our tax rate, and then at the bottom getting my total, right? My grand total, and then putting that together. We've done that in multiple different exercises, and our total will be 1017. The thing is that each one of these I'm referring to in formulas as D24, right? We're not actually giving them names. So what we're going to do now is give certain cells an actual name. There's certain rules about using names that you could read on the bottom of 392. They just have to be original, and they can't be copies of anybody else, any other existing field in Excel, or the name of a formula, basically, right? So let's take a look at how we do that. So basically, I'm going to take this cell under size. I'm going to click up in B14, and instead of calling it B14, I'm now going to call it pizza size. Okay? So whenever I use pizza size in a formula, it knows that I'm talking about B14. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to put a 1 in B14 for argument's sake. And down here, I'm going to write equals pizza size. You'll see it pops up automatically, and it has this little custom name right there. Okay, what's going to happen when I press enter? It's going to copy that one here, just as if I would have typed in equals B14. Okay, so pizza size now becomes a new variable that we could use in formulas and equations. And imagine, we could now make new variables like subtotal and tax and so on in order to keep them very simple. So I'm going to make pizza size. I'm going to make pizza top. What am I doing? I'm going to make pizza top. Let's just copy that into the name box. So I'll click on topping, click up on B15, put in pizza top, hit enter. Okay, I'll do the same thing for drink. Okay, and now so far we have 3 custom fields. Okay, I could also assign a whole range information, like I could call this customer, and it would bring up all these things, and I could call it with one range. Okay, but for now, let's go see where else we can see these from. I go into formulas, and I click where it says name manager. In name manager, it will give me a list of all the custom names I've already come up with, where they refer to, and what workbook it's in. Okay? So I could make these refer only to one sheet or to multiple files or to the entire workbook. So I could choose what the scope of it is, and I could change the reference if I want it now to refer to somewhere else. But let's keep this simple. Okay, I could come up with a new name. I could specify the scope. I could write a comment about it, which is really useful for documenting what refers to what, because this can get very complicated if you have a bunch of them. And through doing this, we're able to create a whole bunch of custom fields that we'll be able to use in our formulas. Okay, so I added in some in there, and let's see what happens next. I can also use these for some really cool features like dropdowns. Okay, one of the cool features of making named ranges is that now you'll see there's this little dropdown next to the name box. I can click on it, and I'll get all my custom fields. So if you're somewhere way over on the other side of the sheet, and you want to just zip back to the drink field, you click it, and it will just pop back to wherever the drink reference is, making that very handy. Okay, now we can also do this process in bulk. Instead of going to the name box every time or going to the name manager, we could also select cells, like for example, pizza cost like this, and press where it says create from selection. Now it's going to say create names from the values in the top row, left column, bottom row, or right column. In our case, we want left column. And it's going to automatically create names with all these. So if I type in S, M, L, XL, or party, it knows which cell it refers to. Okay? Okay, so I basically set up a little sample or invoice. Okay, this is similar to the example that you would see on page 398, 399. And of course you can play around with it. I was just having fun. I have to find a font that's not so particularly weird that you could still read it. Okay, so basically the idea is that when I put in the customer's name, I want it to automatically show up on the receipt. This is I'm going to print out. And then have his address, phone number, and date show up here. And I want to have the pizza order that the guy made show up in this column next to where it says pizza order. And I want the price to show up next to it automatically. Okay? So size, topping, drink, and that's going to come from up here, and we're going to grab information from these tables over here. Now, I've named the customer's name CNAME, address is address, phone, and date. And I could easily go into this square and I could type in equals C name. You'll notice it comes up in my box and it automatically highlights B10 because it knows where to find that field. So I'll just hit enter and it will come back as 0. Of course, we could put an if statement around this to basically not show anything if nothing's there. So we'll say if CNAME equals nothing, then do nothing. Otherwise, and we'll just put in CNAME. Okay, so right now nothing is going to show up, and basically we put in a logical test. If CNAME is blank, then just show a blank. Otherwise, put CNAME value in it. Let's test if it works, and we'll type in Bob up at the top, and Bob shows up. If there's no customer's name, it just looks like a blank, and we don't get a 0 or an error message. Okay, so let's go through this, and we'll just repeat the fields. You know how to do this from previous modules, and for argument's sake, if you really want it to be fancy, I guess we could do that, but okay, I'll drag it down a couple like this. Let's take a look at customer name. Next, we want address. What did I call address? I called it address. So we'll just change CNAME over here to address. You can see that it comes up as 2 different things. So I'm going to pick this one. And you'll notice that it puts it in blue. And it picked the right cell of where it's supposed to be. Okay. And again, I'm going to grab address, the custom field that I made up. Phone. I believe I called phone. I did. So let's call that the same thing. We'll go to phone and we'll just change CNAME to phone. And over here we'll do the same thing. Okay. And then for date, we don't even need this. I'll just say order date. So we'll go here, say equals order date. And in date, I'll write equals today. Well, we were so close. I forgot the brackets. There we go. Okay, so we have the date, and the date didn't copy over properly because it's formatted as general. But if we pick short date, we should be in business. There we go. So let's fill it in. We're going to type in Bob. We're going to put 123 Main Street. Phone number could be 705-555-5555. Okay, and then we probably want to get them all to align properly so they look nice. Same thing over here. Okay, and that's going to come up whenever we type in a customer name. Will automatically show off on the receipt. And when we print this off, this is the part that we're going to print out. The delivery guy is going to hand to the customer. All right, let's keep on going with our application. The cool thing is, once this is set up, we could use this sheet over and over again to generate these fancy-looking receipts, right? So let's see if we could even add a pizza picture. Okay, so it's looking better and better. We have our slogan, we have our pizza guy, and this is what's going to print out when we generate the order. Okay, so now let's throw in some pizza details. Okay, so we've already called this pizza size, and we say to the customer on the phone, what do you want to order? He says an extra large, right? So for size, we could just write equals pizza size. Okay, so this is going to this over here will copy from up here, and we could hit enter, and it'll just bring in the XL. We could do the same thing for pizza topping, and we could do the same thing for equals drink. Okay, again, we kind of have that same issue with the zeros, but for now we won't worry about it. As I showed you before, we can use an if statement to suppress those. And how are we going to get the prices to be pulled in automatically? That's really simple. You probably already know how to do that. We're going to use VLOOKUP, right? So we're going to go equals VLOOKUP. All right, and we're going to say our lookup value is going to be this guy right here, or we could pick that one. It's the same thing. Okay, it's going to say what's our table array. We're going to grab pizza cost. It's going to say what column is our price in. It's going to be in number 2. And that's all we need. Okay, so it brings it back, $10.99, and we're just going to turn these into dollars. Okay, so that will automatically come up. if I change the order now to a large, it's automatically going to address the price. Okay, so let me fill in the rest of them and we'll continue. All right, so basically we don't have anything in there yet, which is why we have the NAs. We could suppress those, but for argument's sake, let's keep on going. Okay, so I'm going to type in XL for the size. For the topping, the guy says, I'd like 3 toppings. Okay, so we get the price for the toppings using VLOOKUP, pulls it in there automatically. And for the drink, of course, the guy wants Coke. Okay, to make it align, I would take these 3 cells and just move them over a little bit so it all lines up and looks nice. And this is really starting to come along. Like you could see how our orders coming together. We could put in a subtotal, simply putting in equals sum, and we could just pick a fixed number of items. And then we could add taxes and so on. But the cool thing is that our whole menu will, the whole order will change depending on what the customer wants. So this makes it really reusable, and we can keep on printing this bottom menu over and over again, depending on what the order is. Okay, so it gives us a lot of flexibility. Okay, a little technical glitch there. It wasn't accurately grabbing the right price, and I fixed it by adding false at the end of our VLOOKUP to make sure that it got an exact match. So you just want to keep an eye on that, small things like that, to make sure that they line up properly, right? So in our case, if I change this to medium or extra large, we should be getting the right prices coming in now. Okay. So basically, that's the idea, right? We fill in the information, we could save the sheet, use it over and over again, and then we'd have this coming in. Now, you'll notice that when I used VLOOKUP here, I actually said equals VLOOKUP, and I said pizza size. And where did it go find pizza size? That cell is in B14, but it grabbed it using its name. So it's very flexible in terms of using defined names within a formula, like you can see on page 402 and page 403. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of how this would come together. And then we could also, okay, and we'll cover one interesting last idea that they have on page 404. Maybe we want to set up what's called a transfer area. We'll set that up down here. And the idea is that once the information is put onto the receipt above, we would want to keep it and put it into our customer records, right? So we could basically create a table either on this sheet or a different sheet that, although we're printing this out and then we start again with another customer, we still keep all the information that's gone through the sheet, so we could build it up into a customer database. And to do that, we could simply just put in customer name, and we could put in address, and whoops, there we go, and so on. Like, so we could build it out, all the fields that we have in here. Hasn't been working for me today. Phone, and next we'll do, oh, we didn't actually have a date. Okay, and then if we want to have information about the order saved as well, so we could do an analysis later, maybe using a pivot table, we could easily bring those in too. We could grab pizza size, and we could put in toppings and drink. And the idea is that we then transfer these fields onto somewhere else, and we'd be able to save this information into a table. So even though when the next customer calls, we're going to replace this, and the whole table will automatically update and change with the new prices and so on, this way we're able to very quickly build a little database, let's say on a different sheet or a different document, that we can then use. That brings us to the end of 7.1, and in 7.2, we're going to look at data validation and protection, which is very important because for some fields, if you accidentally type in the wrong information, they can get the wrong pizza, the wrong price. And more importantly, we don't want any of these cells ever to be changed. We want them all to happen automatically. We don't want somebody to actually click in here and change one of our formulas and then it's going to stop working, right? The only thing we ever really want anybody to enter is just these 7 boxes. Okay, all the rest of this has been set up to automatically fill in our receipt and then save it to the database. Okay, so we're going to take a look at some strategies for doing that, and also use something called data validation, getting users to pick from a particular list so we can make sure that the choices that they're making don't break our sheet and keep on going. So thank you guys. I hope this was useful, and we'll continue on with the next one.